It all started with a knock, and a demand that would make anyone pause. $250,000, $250,000. That's what Karen, the notorious HOA president, insisted my wife owed a membership fee for simply living near the lake. She strutted up our driveway, eyes sharp, clipboard in hand, expecting fear, compliance, and quick payment. She expected obedience. She expected control. What she didn't expect was the woman standing on the other side of that door. My wife wasn't just unpacking boxes that afternoon. She's a decorated army general, calm, commanding, every step and word radiating authority. When the cop arrived, ready to enforce the bogus fee, he froze for just a moment. Then, seeing her badge and posture, he snapped to attention. "Yes, General," he said, and just like that, the HOA president who thought she could intimidate, threaten, and extort was silenced. Her reign over the neighborhood didn't just falter, it collapsed in uniformed silence, right there on our doorstep. Karen had no idea what hit her. It started like any ordinary Saturday. My wife was unpacking boxes from our recent move, the sunlight streaming through the windows, the faint smell of fresh paint lingering in the air. Our new home near the lake promised peace, quiet, and a fresh start, at least that's what we thought. Then came the knock, sharp, impatient, and authoritative. I opened the door to see Karen, the notorious HOA president, clipboard in hand, eyes blazing with entitlement. Behind her, a uniformed cop stood, uncertain but ready to enforce what Karen called the rules. "I'm here to collect the $250,000 membership fee," Karen announced, voice dripping with confidence. "Payment is expected immediately. Failure to comply may result in fines, liens, or legal action." I blinked. $250,000 for what? Simply living on my own land near a lake. It felt absurd. Yet Karen's arrogance made it clear she believed she could bully anyone into submission. My wife stepped forward, calm but unyielding. Her presence was commanding, but not loud she didn't have to be. Every ounce of her demeanor screamed authority, honed over decades of service. She pinned Karen with a steady gaze, and for a moment, the air seemed to shift. The cop, clearly unsure of the dynamics, took a small step back, clipboard in hand. He glanced at my wife, then at Karen, caught somewhere between duty and instinct. He had no idea who he was dealing with. "Excuse me," my wife said calmly, her tone measured, precise. "Could you explain the legal basis for this demand?" Karen's confident smile faltered. This is standard HOA procedure. You are required to pay the community membership fee." My wife tilted her head slightly, eyes narrowing. "And what legal authority allows a private HOA president to demand $250,000 from a resident?" Karen stumbled, her rehearsed lines evaporating. The cop's eyes widened slightly, and the tension grew thick enough to slice with a knife. For the first time that day, Karen looked uncertain. She had assumed fear, compliance, and quick payment, not a confrontation backed by real authority. And then came the moment that would shift the entire balance. The cop stepped closer, instinctively straightening, eyes locking on my wife's badge. He snapped to attention, voice crisp, respectful. "Yes, General." The words reverberated in the quiet room like a cannon shot. Karen's shoulders stiffened. Her mouth opened, then closed. She realized, perhaps too late, that her game of intimidation had just met a force entirely beyond her expectations. And that's when we knew the HOA reign over our new home was about to end. Karen's confidence, once towering and unshakable, began to falter. She fumbled with her clipboard, flipping through papers as if sheer bureaucracy could salvage her authority. This fee is standard procedure," she stammered, voice slightly higher than before. "It's required for all residents in the lakefront community. You're bound by the HOA covenant." My wife didn't flinch, she didn't need to. Every word she spoke radiated discipline and command, honed over years in the Army in situations far more intense than a petty HOA dispute. "Show me the legal documentation," she said evenly. "Cite the law. Explain the enforcement authority. Otherwise, this demand is invalid." Karen's face flushed red. She had no real documentation, only a stack of written notices and threats, none enforceable by law. She expected compliance, not questions that exposed her bluff. The cop, still standing nearby, shifted his weight. He was no longer merely an observer. The moment had changed him. He had seen her, recognized her authority, and instinctively acknowledged it. Every protocol he had learned in the service now applied, and Karen's bluff meant nothing against real authority. "Yes, General," he repeated, saluting, crisp and exact. The words were simple but heavy with impact, silencing Karen instantly. The room, the driveway, the sunny afternoon all seemed to pause for a heartbeat. Karen's hands trembled as she tried to maintain control. I'm enforcing the rules." My wife took a calm step forward. "Enforcing rules doesn't mean extorting residents. You've misrepresented authority and created a fraudulent demand. That's illegal, Karen." Karen's eyes darted, realizing the weight of the accusation. This wasn't a petty dispute she could intimidate her way through anymore. The cop beside her glanced at Karen, then back at my wife, tension in his jaw. He clearly understood that any action against us would be a serious misstep. We stood there, calm, collected, unshakable. Karen, on the other hand, flailed with desperation. She shouted, pointed at papers, tried to manipulate the situation, but the impact of my wife's presence, experience, and the cop's allegiance made every attempt hollow. In that moment, it wasn't just a confrontation. It was a lesson. The HOA assumed power, once amplified by fear, bureaucracy, and intimidation, was revealed as hollow. Karen's self-importance crumbled in the presence of real authority, experience, and prepared resistance. Neighbors, drawn by the commotion, peeked from windows and doorways. They watched as the once dominant HOA president shrank in front of someone who wouldn't be intimidated, someone who represented real law and leadership. The tension in the air was thick, electric, almost cinematic. Karen's threats had no bite, her arrogance no strength. Every tactic she had used for years to control, manipulate, and frighten residents gone. By the end of the confrontation, Karen's words were nothing more than whispers. Her posture sagged. She understood fully. She had underestimated the woman standing before her. The HOA power was over. And yet, the best part hadn't even happened. The final blow, the irreversible lesson, was still coming. By the time the sun reached its peak that afternoon, the tension had shifted completely. Karen, the once proud HOA president, now stood frozen, her confidence evaporated like morning mist. Every threat she had thrown, every demand she had made, had crumbled against the unwavering authority of my wife. The cop, standing at attention just behind her, didn't move a muscle. His salute was precise, his demeanor firm. Karen realized that no amount of shouting, pleading, or paperwork could bend the situation back in her favor. She had misjudged completely. This wasn't a homeowner who could be intimidated. This was someone who commanded respect on a scale she couldn't comprehend. I watched quietly, letting the moment unfold. My wife, calm and collected, had already won. The room, the porch, the driveway, everything felt charged with quiet triumph. The neighbors who had gathered to watch the confrontation unfold whispered among themselves, eyes wide, witnessing the complete dismantling of Karen's overblown authority. Karen attempted one last gasp, a trembling protest about community rules and enforcement. But her words fell flat, meaningless. The cop's gaze, unwavering, made it clear no one would enforce her fabricated demands. Then came the final, undeniable moment of justice. Karen's HOA, the network of intimidation and fake authority she had built over years, began to unravel. Reports were filed exposing her false claims, neighbors spoke out, and word spread that her attempts to extort $250,000 had failed spectacularly. Her reign, once built on fear and compliance, ended not with a fight but with silence, law, and undeniable authority. The afternoon air was heavy with satisfaction. My wife stepped down from the porch, her posture still commanding, her expression calm but victorious. She had defended our property, our rights, and sent a message that no one, not even an overconfident HOA president, could overstep without consequence. Neighbors approached cautiously, some hesitant, some curious, but all respectful. They offered quiet congratulations, nods of approval, and a shared understanding. Authority is not given by titles on clipboards or self-appointed positions. It is earned through action, experience, and integrity. Karen left our property that day, head lowered, a clipboard of failed threats in her hand. a reputation shattered. The HOA she had tried to wield like a weapon had been exposed for what it truly was: a fragile network of intimidation that couldn't survive when confronted by real leadership. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the driveway and lakefront, I felt a sense of profound satisfaction. The fight hadn't been loud or messy, but it had been decisive. My wife had stood her ground, and in doing so, had protected not only our home but the principle that no one should be bullied, intimidated, or extorted ever. Sometimes, victory doesn't come from anger or confrontation. It comes from calm authority, preparation, and standing firm. And as the HOA faded into the background, a humbled reminder of overreach, one truth remained clear. You can't bluff your way over real power, real experience, and a disciplined mind. That day, on our porch, with the lake sparkling in the sunlight, the HOA had learned a lesson they would never forget. And Karen, she would remember who she underestimated, and how swiftly true authority can turn arrogance into silence.